Hey guys, and welcome on into our next NHL season preview show. We are done the Atlantic Division, we are done the Central Division, and now we move on to the Metropolitan Division, which has a lot of interesting teams to talk about. And today we're going to talk about the Stanley Cup favorites, the President's Trophy favorites, their division favorites as well. The books have this team, Carolina, as the number one team in the league. So we will jump right into it here. I have Ian Cameron joining me again. So make sure to give him a follow, Applerbano. His Twitter link is in the description below as well. We will jump right into it here with the additions and subtractions for the Carolina Hurricanes. And when you look at it, it's a big list, both additions and subtractions here. The subtractions, Max Pacioretty, that just didn't work out. His injuries and his time in Carolina just didn't overall work out. A lot of the other guys are depth guys, so I'm not going to go into each one, but a lot of the other guys are depth guys. Paul Stastny is a loss, I think. Goss Despair is a loss. Um, I don't really view Calvin DeHaan as a loss. Stepan was getting up there. Jake Gardner as well. So not a whole lot of actual of the core left. A lot of depth guys. When you look at who they brought in, Michael Bunting from Toronto, who's projected to be on the top line. So we'll get to Carolina's line projections. I don't see a lot of those happening. If I was coach, I would definitely not have the projected roster the way it's set up now. But Bunting's supposed to be on the top line. Adding in Dmitry Orlov is a good addition to an already really strong defense. Brendan Lemieux, Tony DeAngelo, some I don't want to say questionable behavior guys, but some guys that'll bring some extra punch in the lineup. Definitely physical guys. Caleb Jones, Zach Aston Reese, depth guys as well. Aston Reese was just invited to a tryout, so we'll see if he earns a spot on the team. Overall, a big list of subtractions. I think when you look at the additions, they probably did improve this offseason overall. Ian, what do you think about the Hurricanes and all their additions and subtractions this offseason?
Yeah, the way I see it with the subtractions is there's not really anyone that you're going to say, wow, we're really devastated. We're not going to have that guy back this season. Max Pacioretty, when healthy, he's still a very, very good offensive player, but we just haven't seen that from him. And they just couldn't take the chance on trusting him and banking on his health to be where it needs to be for another season. Derek Stepan, veteran contributions, but replaceable. Calvin DeHaan, replaceable. Certainly, yes, a Puljujärvi replaceable. They're not going to shed any tears seeing that guy go out the door. Paul Stastny, look, best days behind him. Goss Despair, liability on the blue line. I don't think that fits with what Brind'Amour wants from his defense. He wants not only mobile players, but he wants steady, dependable, reliable with the puck in their own zone. And too many times you don't get that from the ghost, Shane Goss Despair. Kosh has just always been injured. There's another guy that's just not been able to stay healthy. And Jake Gardner pretty much lost his spot, in Carolina. And they've got depth for days, as we'll get to when we look at the lineup for Carolina on the blue line. And then up front, I like a lot of the additions. Look, Michael Bunting, say what you want. He can get a little undisciplined at times, take too many penalties, let the emotions get the better of him. And we saw that at times with Toronto. But if you can rein that in, it gives you a lot of what Carolina was missing, especially when they got swept by Florida, the tough, gritty goals, going to the crease, going to the front of the net, taking punishment to score. That is what Michael Bunting can give Carolina. And it's an element for Carolina that they didn't have, especially in the playoffs last year. So it's a nice addition. It's not the worst cost either. Dmitry Orlov, if it's the Orlov in the regular season, it's a hell of an addition to the blue line. But like so many of those Bruins that underachieved in the first round shocker against Florida, that upset, Orlov had a dreadful series. It's really, really hard to peg and figure out why Dmitry Orlov struggled so much in that series, but it didn't look anything like the pretty steady defenseman he has been most of his career. Just not puck management was an issue, some bad plays, mishaps, turnovers, just things you don't usually see with Orlov. But, again, he's been a great regular season defenseman, And actually, he's been pretty good in the playoffs. It was just caught up in a bad playoff, and a lot of Bruins had bad playoffs. So it's not fair to single out Orlov, but certainly didn't have the playoff performance he was hoping. It's still a nice addition, I think, for Carolina to an already very good blue line. Brendan Lemieux, Tony DeAngelo, again, back here with the Carolina Hurricanes. And look, for the most part, he was on his best behavior here with the Carolina Hurricanes. So you're hoping that can be the case. They bring in Zach Aston Reese, who, again, kind of lost his spot once the Leafs added, Sam Lafferty and some of these other depth forwards at the deadline last year, kind of forced Aston Reese kind of out of the lineup a bit. But I'm telling you what, with what Carolina's got up front, even if Aston Reese doesn't crack the top four lines in the opening night lineup, I mean, there's a guy that can slide into the lineup if there's injuries. They've got a bunch of these forwards that are capable of that. They've really done a nice job, and it's going to be a very competitive training camp for Carolina for these fourth line spots, because they are certainly filled with a bunch of players that are going to be pushing to try to make it onto the team on the fourth line. And when you factor in that they're going to have to try to push out guys like Martinook, who's a pretty good player, and they think highly of Jack Drury. He's going to be in the mix for a fourth line spot. Stefan Nason had a really nice year for Carolina last year. And so it's going to be a big battle. But what this team has done with their additions and subtractions, and I'll speak on it further when we look at the projected lineup for this season, they got depth for days, and not only on the blue line anymore, but at forward as well. They have a lot of depth in this organization now, and it's probably going to serve them well throughout the season, especially if injuries accumulate.
Yeah, for sure. We'll talk about it, but there's a really big surprise that's projected to be on the fourth line, and that will show how much depth they really have. So we'll get to that really soon. But before we get to the lineup, we're going to look at upcoming free agents. And this could be, I don't want to say a do or die or an all in season for Carolina, but when you look at some of the guys they have coming up here as UFAs and RFAs. Martin Acius is going to want a nice, a big deal. Seth Jarvis is definitely going to want a big deal. Jack Drury is going to want a raise from definitely what he's getting, being an RFA. So does that push Teuvo Teravainen out? Does it push Martinook out? Lemieux, Nason, all UFAs. Will Carolina be able to resign them? Then when you look at the defense, Brady Shea, a big part of the defense. Brett Pesce, a really good defensive defenseman that's been in trade rumors for a lot. So we'll see if he makes it to the deadline. D'Angelo, Caleb Jones, Chatfield, all UFAs. Antti Ranta, I don't have his picture in the bottom right-hand corner. That's because I don't really think he is a necessity for Carolina. The other guys I have down there are guys I think that they should really resign. Pesce, I guess he could possibly get traded, but still, you don't want to lose him for nothing. But Antti Ranta, that's a guy you should be trading by the deadline, in my opinion. Just with what you have in net, which we'll get to here shortly. Frederik Andersen or Antti Ranta, one of the two I really think should be on the move. And with Ranta as a UFA this upcoming season, and with the contracts that Carolina has to deal with, I think it's best just to keep Andersen as your backup, or 1A, 1B with Kochekov, and Ranta should be finding his way out. I'm sure there are lots of teams that would like to have Antti Ranta, but Carolina, if they go with the three goalies again, all right. But I think by the trade deadline, somebody should be finding a new place to play. Ian, what do you think about this big list of upcoming free agents for the Hurricanes? Who should they be focusing most on re-signing?
I think it's usually your UFAs are usually the players you want to focus in on most, and because the RFAs, it's not an expiring contract. You can still get a deal done the following year, but I still think number one still has to be, even though he's an RFA only, and it's obviously Marty Necas. I mean, this is a guy that's just we've been singing the praises of him on all the hockey shows I've done, including the Ice Guys, just how much of a breakout he has made here with the Carolina Hurricanes. Coming off a career year last year, 71 points, 28 goals, 43 assists. And what I liked about Marty Necas is durability. in a very tough physical contact sport like hockey. He played every regular season game. He avoided injuries. That's what you want to see as well. So certainly that's going to be one of the priorities if I'm a GM of this Carolina team. Seth Jarvis, I kind of saw his play dip just ever so slightly last year, but we still like him overall in a top 6 forward role for the Hurricanes. Last year, we were expecting his numbers to go up even more than the 40 points he had in 68 games a couple years ago. 1 point less in a full 82 games last year, only 14 goals. So, like I said, it wasn't the continued improvement from Seth Jarvis that I think we expected. But he's still someone that, see how he does this year. And I think, he's going to be someone that's looking to probably drive his value up, bounce back a little bit, be a little bit more impactful offensively. The rest of them, Stefan Nason's been good, especially in a power play role for this team, that big body in front of the net. We've seen him really be good for Carolina as far as the man advantage goes, but you can't pay everybody. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of season he has for Carolina if he increases his value. Brendan Lemieux, someone who's going to be one of those guys battling for one of those depth last 3 forward spots. One of those roles probably on the 4th line for this team. Martin Nuka, UFA, who had a really, really strong start to the playoffs last year. It's pretty incredible to see how Martin Nuke started the playoffs, kind of tailed off in the Florida series, but who didn't tail off for the Carolina Panthers in the Florida Panthers series. Teravainen's the one where, look, this is a big year for him. This is a really, really important season for Teuvo Teravainen. It's a guy that last year, 68 games, huge drop-off in his numbers compared to 2 years ago, where he had 65 points and 22 goals. Now, he's never been a huge goal scorer. His career high is 23, but to only get 12 goals and 37 points in 68 games, disappointing. There's no other way around it for Teuvo Teravainen. Nothing in the playoffs from him, really. Now, he did miss some time throughout the playoffs as well, but, the Islanders series, and then when he came back against Florida, didn't do much for Carolina. So it's a big year for him now as far as expiring contract. And, I always like that from a prop standpoint where you buy low on someone like a Teravainen. They want to play well this year and have a big year, knowing that they're playing for a contract. So maybe we'll get that kind of contract year, big season out of Teuvo Teravainen, but I got to see it before I believe it. On the blue line, Brady Shea, Brett Pesce stand out. They're the 2 guys you really want to take care of. I think Brady Shea, nobody talks enough about how good he is. I think he's really solid. And Brett Pesce's terrific. And it's certainly got to be a priority of all the defensemen that are UFAs. D'Angelo, not so much. Jones. Chatfield, actually, you know what? Chatfield for Carolina. Jalen Chatfield, I was impressed in the playoffs, what they got out of him. I thought he played maybe a little over his head like a Radko Gudas did for Florida, but you also have to give him credit for playing maybe above what people expected out of him. And he had a really nice, effective playoff run for Carolina. So Jalen Chatfield is going to be an interesting player to watch. I've already said it many times. I don't understand what they're doing with the goaltending, that they brought back the 2 old relics, both of them. I understand keeping one of them. I get it, especially with Pyotr Kochetkov, someone to mentor the young kid. But keeping your 2 old goaltenders, injury-prone goaltenders that you're not sure are going to be able to maintain a high level moving forward at their age and with the injury history, that you kept both of them and you've seemingly put up a blockade to the goalie of the future in your organization to get in there as the potential number 1. It's absurd to me. I don't really get what they're doing, but they have Ronta and Anderson back. And unfortunately for Kochetkov, it means he's only going to get in there probably if there's injuries. But knowing the recent history of Ronta and Anderson, I can totally see Kochetkov getting his share of playing time this season for Carolina.
Yeah, for sure. I want to apologize to Jalen Chatfield. I do have Justin
Oh,
Chatfield
yeah.
written on here.
I just
Um,
noticed that now. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh, well.
I thought I checked for spelling errors and mistakes, but I guess I missed that one. So I want to apologize to him for that. But moving on along to possible lineup, as I said earlier, I do not agree with how this lineup is set up. Um, yes, Ian is right. Teuvo Teravainen struggled last year, but I'm not quite sure that putting him on the 4th line is where he belongs. Bunting, yes, a good addition, but throwing him on the top line above Svechnikov doesn't make sense to me. I get it. Maybe you want to spread out the lineup, spread out the offense, and maybe that's why this projection is how it is. But there's no way that this is how I would have my forward lineup if I was head coach. When it comes to defensemen, you're pretty set there. That top six is really really good for Carolina, and it will help whoever's in net. Will be helped by that defense. Forward lines will have to be fixed, but I'm not coach, so that'll be up to the coach. But goalies, I hope Kochetkov gets the backup position. I hope that maybe Carolina does go with three goalies. I don't know what else Kochetkov has to prove in the AHL. I think he's proven enough in the NHL when he's got the opportunity that he should at the least be the very least be a backup and not really a third stringer. So we'll see what Carolina does overall. But it's a reason they're one of they are the Stanley Cup favorite is because they do have top to bottom a really good lineup. I feel like they're maybe a one center away, maybe Kotkaniemi, maybe not the best second. Maybe if you go out and get one more top line or second line center, I think Carolina could be um, going to the Cup. Ian, what do you think about this possible lineup? Do you agree with me about the forward lines and that they're not really set up all that well? They should be probably changed up. What do you think overall about the Carolina lineup here?
Yeah, I know I've mentioned this in previous team preview videos we've recorded. You have to take these depth charts on these sites with a grain of salt. It doesn't mean it's set in stone. We don't know for sure. We have no idea if Bunting's going to be on the top line to start the year. We have no idea Teravainen's going to be on the fourth line to start the year. This is guesswork. This is assumptions right now that we are working with. We need to see training camp. We need to see preseason games to really get more of an accurate idea of what these line combinations are going to be. That being said, would it shock me if Teravainen's down the lineup to begin the year? Knowing Rod Brind'Amour, and he's okay with giving a player a kick in the pants every now and then and saying you want to be back up the lineup in a top six forward role, you got to earn it. And you can make an argument that Teuvo Teravainen's play dropped off significantly last year to the point where he's got to earn it now. And maybe that's going to be something that Brind'Amour experiments just because he wants to see this guy come ready, in shape, ready to work, ready to improve, and get back to a level that I believe the Hurricanes think he can be at. And I'm sure him personally, Teuvo thinks he can be at. That was very disappointing last year from him. So maybe it's going to be a message sending type of deal from Coach Rod Brind'Amour here saying, you know what, we are going to start Teravainen in the bottom six and let him earn it and let him show me as the coach that he's ready to be back up where he was and where he's been for much of his tenure here with Carolina coming off a disappointing season. But all of this remains to be seen. What I do know is regardless of line combinations, what an incredibly deep forward group they have. I mean, Aho, Jarvis, Svechnikov, Necas, Kotkaniemi, Bunting now comes in, Jordan Stahl, Jesper Fast, Martin Nuke Drury, Nason. Very, very impressive, with what they have. And from all indications, Svechnikov in particular, who, of course, had that injury last year. They missed him badly in the playoffs. He's really worked overtime to be able to be ready here and for the start of training camp. He's also put on some weight, I've noticed as well, which is good to see. I think he's probably going to be harder to get off the puck now. That's the one thing. You could sometimes body him off the puck and knock him off the puck easily. Not the biggest guy in the world, but he's worked on that in the offseason. So give Svechnikov credit. So he could really have some kind of year, if he can show that he's really come back from the knee injury that he suffered last year. And it was a tough injury as well. No question about that. He's had to rehab, had the surgery back in March. But from all indications, looks like he's ready for training camp. And he's ready to go here. I mean, the blue line, we've waxed poetic on it for years. What can you say? It's just got incredible depth. All six guys can play at a high level. They bring in Orlov. Brent Burns, I think his defensive liabilities and limitations are masked because just in general, the whole team defensive concept is so strong. So you can hide some of those defensive flaws that Brent Burns has. He's fit in okay here with Carolina. So Orlov, Burns, Shea, Pesce, Slavin, who's outstanding, D'Angelo. I mean, it's just a really, really good six that they've got on the blue line. There's no doubt. And plus, if there's injuries, you can throw in a Jalen Chatfield. You can throw in a Caleb Jones. How about a Nathan Beaulieu, who they signed to a PTO? What if he's makes the team. And all of a sudden there's a guy that's played a ton of games in the NHL that you could put in there if there's injuries. So just unbelievable organizational depth throughout, forward and especially on the blue line. And say what you will about, I'm a little mystified that, Carolina's going to have Anderson and Ronta, 1A, 1B as their starting goaltenders. But if nothing else, they've at least got tons of depth there as well with these two veterans. And of course, still their goaltender that's likely going to be the number one down the line, Pyotr Kochetkov. So the key word here with the possible lineup is depth at all positions. And that's never a bad thing when you're trying to go the distance and win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah. I look at Ronta and think Edmonton. Don't you want to maybe give Carolina a call? Like Edmonton's one of those teams where they could use an upgrade in net, and there's lots of teams, I'm sure. But I agree with you. Kochetkov he deserves to take the next step, and one of those old guys should go, and there'll be a team that will take him. So we'll see if see what happens with that during the season. The last segment here, future bets for the Carolina Hurricanes. 109.5 is their point total. 113 last year, 116 the year before. I would have to lean with the over. I think when you look at the point total, it is a high point total, but this Carolina team got better in the offseason, and as long as they stay healthy, because that Svechnikov injury, I was completely low on Carolina in the playoffs due to that injury and the fact that they didn't go out and get anybody. They didn't try to do anything to upgrade. So the Hurricanes were very down. I was very down on them in the playoffs last year, but coming into this year, they are going to be one of the best teams in the NHL. So I get their President's Trophy, win division, win conference, win Stanley Cup odds are all lower than other teams, which totally makes sense. When it comes to Aho and his goal and points prop, if the lineup is like we just saw in the possible lineup, and you've got Bunting on that left side, then I would lean more towards under in points and goals total. Aho, 67 points last year in 75 games, 36 goals last year. I feel like if you put Svechnikov beside him, I feel like that would be and even Marty Nashis or Seth Jarvis, but I feel like Svechnikov and Aho on the same line would help the point total. So I'm not going to get to it. Nothing really stands out there. Anderson wins at 30.5. He played 34 games last year and 21 wins. When you look at it, Anderson played 34 games, Ronta played 27, Kochetkov played 24 in the regular season. So it was a three-way split, a lot of because of injuries. But Anderson wins. I couldn't go anywhere near the over. It would be under or pass for me. And I know thinking about this Carolina team is going to be really good, and you're saying to take the under, and then the goalie wins. Yes, I am, because just how this team is set up with the three goalies they have, with Anderson's injury history, I would say take the under, and Anderson wins at 30.5. Who will have more points, Carolina or New Jersey? As really good as of the lineup for this Carolina Hurricanes team that they have, I am high on the New Jersey Devils. So to get New Jersey at plus 100, it would definitely be the Devils or pass for me when it comes to Carolina, New Jersey. But I think it's going to be a fight between those two teams all season long, kind of like it was last year. But I'm a little bit higher on this New Jersey team, so I would take New Jersey plus 100, point total over for the Hurricanes, and Anderson wins under 30.5. Ian, what do you think here for future bets for the Hurricanes? Does anything catch your eye?
Yeah, I'm not rushing to bet the over 109.5 points, but I'd lean that way. They had 113 last year, and I don't see this team certainly any worse than they were last year. In fact, I think they could be as good, and in some areas they might even be better. So certainly I would lean over 109.5. As far as the division goes, not at plus 180. Don't love the price enough. Conference and Stanley Cup. Now, most years I have bet this. I didn't really love Carolina nearly as much going into last year. I'm contemplating getting back on the horse here with the conference and Stanley Cup futures this year. I really love that when if they have, 2-3 key forwards injured in the playoffs next year, or if they have a couple of defensemen injured in the playoffs next year, they actually still are one of those teams that could survive and still, be able to go along and make a deep run because of just, like I said, all the depth they have now, forward wise and on the blue line. So you need that come playoff time. So that plus 450 to win the conference, plus 800 to win the Stanley Cup makes sense. I have no real strong opinion on the goals or the points for Aho, just because, I could see a really balanced offense for Carolina across the lineup. Aho gets some of his, Natchez gets some of his, Svechnikov, let's not forget, he's going to be back again, and he'll be cutting into that pie, if you will, in terms of offensive slices for the Carolina Hurricanes this year, if you will. And then Freddie Anderson, you're right, with any of the goalies, especially the two old aging goalies, you can't bet anything but under, personally, for me. You're talking, and this is not an indictment of their goaltending. This is just the way it is. It's a 3-goalie system, and we have seen that. We saw that clear as day last year. All 3 goaltenders got significant number of starts for the Hurricanes last year, Ronta, Anderson, and Kochetkov. So that's not a situation where I'm betting any of those goalies over. When I'm seeing that kind of split workload right down the middle between not just 2, but 3 goalies. And if there's injuries again, like I said, this year for Ronta and Anderson, you're going to see that again from Rod Brindamore. He's going to really balance the workload as far as starts for his 3 goaltenders. And I'm pretty torn on who will have more points. I mean, I really like New Jersey up front. I do think New Jersey's better than Carolina up front, but I think Carolina's got deeper, more sturdier blue line than New Jersey. And in goal, if healthy and playing well, probably an edge to Carolina with Ronta and Anderson, and they always have Kochetkov if one or both struggle or get hurt. And I have to lean Carolina in the net because of just the unknowns yet. We don't know about Vanacek at playoff time, and we don't know about Schmid. If he's going to, how's he going to do with a bigger workload, in the regular season this year? How's he going to do in the playoffs next year? Just haven't seen enough as far as games and sample size. So I have to give Carolina a slight edge in goal. So I guess I'd lean Carolina more points, but it's not by much. Man, I really like that Devils team up front. That Devils team is so good up front that they might outscore so many of their problems in other areas. That is how dynamic and that is how incredibly deep they are with their 4 lines. But no, Carolina's a really good team. And again, at some point, they've got to break the door down and say, it's our year. Like, they have all these great years. They've had great teams, and they've been playoff teams year in and year out. They haven't even made a Stanley Cup final once, during this great run the last 5-6 years that they put together. This is that year. And when you look at what we showed you earlier with the UFA, RFA situation after this season, if they don't take that next step in their Stanley Cup pursuit this year, I don't want to say the window is going to be closed on this team, but that door is going to be closing a little bit more after this season compared to going into this season if things don't pan out again.
I couldn't agree more with everything you just said. Couldn't agree more. And then with New Jersey too, when it comes to New Jersey and net, they're really interested. We'll obviously get to New Jersey in a couple days, but they have like 5 different goaltenders. Nico Dawson and Kallgren is there as well. They have Vanacek, like you said, and Schmid. And then I can't remember who they just signed the other day. Kincaid, who obviously shouldn't see the net with those other 4 young guys above them. But New Jersey's goaltending could be really good, but it could also be shaky. It's really hard to tell what we're going to get.
And is someone going to turn into Aiden Hill for them out of the blue, where he just all of a sudden finds it, establishes himself, carries the team, plays great in net, and gets red hot at the right time? I don't know. We'll have to see. Can Vanacek do it? Can Schmid do it? Nico Dawes, I just haven't seen enough from him. Consistency. He's been given a bunch of chances and just hasn't been able. The one that's interesting to monitor is Eric Kallgren, because this guy did play decent at times for the Toronto Maple Leafs. We think he's got a better team, or a team that's pretty good in front of him. I don't want to say better team. Toronto's pretty good, obviously, but he's got an opportunity to maybe make something of himself. I like the way he played in certain instances with the Leafs. Can he continue to grow, continue to develop? All I know for New Jersey is one of those guys is going to have to step up, because that's the only thing hindering them as far as legit Stanley Cup contendership this year. And, they're going to have a full first half of the year to see what these goalies can deliver. And look, if they struggle and they don't feel confident, they can always go out at the trade deadline and get a veteran goalie. That's always something. And we know the Devils have been linked to Hellebuck, and they've been linked to some of these other goalies here in the offseason. So that's always an option if the young goalies, none of them bring that level that they need if they're going to get to their ultimate end goal, winning a Stanley Cup.
For sure. And I'm sure Carolina fans and the Carolina organization is hoping that they can't figure out any of their goaltending issues coming into this season. But that is the first half of the Carolina Hurricanes show. Mossy will be coming in here right now to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes himself. Thanks for watching, guys. And next up to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes is Mossy. Welcome back, Mossy. As always, follow him on Twitter. His Twitter link is in the description below. And today we're talking about the Carolina Hurricanes, a team that is the Cup favorite at most sites. They have the lowest odds to win the Cup. So everyone thinks they are going to be a Cup contender this year. And so we'll see what happens. We'll start with additions and subtractions here. What do you think? It's a big list of subtractions. Have some additions too. But a big off season here for Carolina. Do you think they improved or got worse here, or are they kind of the same in the off season?
I believe, looking at it, I think they improved maybe slightly. You look at players like Pacioretty; they couldn't afford him anyway if he didn't have that Achilles injury. You got Dahan out. Puljujärvi, that's an interesting one because I thought him coming over from the Oilers would, maybe re-spark his game or something, but it just did not. So he's out of there. It's actually sort of sad. Gostisbehere gone. But I mean, you look at it like they're bringing in Orlov to, might be a little bit of like a 1-for-1. The rest of the guys pretty depth. Paul Stastny, 22 points in 73 games last year. He's out too. The main subtractions would be Pacioretty, Gostisbehere. That's about it. So to go to their additions, it's a little funny looking at their additions because Michael Bunting, he has that reputation of not getting along too well with the referees or not being afraid to say what he does. And Rod Brind'Amour is sort of the same way. So that's going to be interesting to see how those two, that dynamic duo flows this year. Orlov coming in from Boston. Boston had him for that rental for the playoffs. Lemieux coming in, sort of that same thing as Bunting, doesn't,
likes
doesn't.
Likes to lick players.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't, not afraid to get under players that way either. D'Angelo coming back. Familiar face in the room, all that stuff that happened in the New York, the Rangers. It's interesting that didn't carry over here necessarily. I mean, they got rid of him, brought him back, but to bring him back says a bit. Caleb Jones, that's a prove me deal, 1 year kind of thing. But yeah, I think having Bunting coming over, Orlov, D'Angelo, those were the big three. And I believe that it's a boost up, I would say, from what they lost anyway, because there's only 3-4 notable subtractions, and they're kind of, I don't know, not that great except for Pacioretty and Gostisbehere.
Awesome. I want to correct what I just said there. Brendan Lemieux didn't lick a player. That was Brad Marchand.
Yeah.
Brendan Lemieux bit Brady Kachuk's finger. So he's a biter, not a licker. That's Marchand. But going to upcoming free agents here for this offseason. Pretty big list here. When you look at this list, I could have put Ronta over there as an important free agent as well to resign. I tried to put pictures of the players I think are the most important to resign. But with the way Carolina's goaltending is right now, which we'll get to in the next segment, I feel like Ronta is expendable for them. But what do you think here about the list of upcoming free agents? Who should Carolina be focusing on re-signing here in the offseason?
Yeah, it's interesting. They got 3 pretty big names in the defensemen, upcoming free agents, but there are no shortage on defensemen when we were reviewing the additions and subtractions when they're bringing in D'Angelo. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. They have no shortage. Um, the main players I think you'd want to lock up Brady Shea, Brett Pesce, and D'Angelo for the defensemen. Now, Brett Pesce has been in rumors of trade, so they might get rid of him. Which could that hurt them? It could. But I feel they have a pretty good history of forming defensemen like Chatfield. I believe he came from Vancouver, and they made him a pretty solid defenseman. Going to the forwards, the big ones here would be Teravainen, Martinook, Natchez, and Jarvis, I believe. You want to get those guys done. They only have 920K cap space this year, so it's going to be interesting to see next year. Cap going up, see what they can do to keep those players. It's quite a few you want to lock in. There's about 7 there that I'm keeping my eye on if they want to still be somewhat in the mix, or else they're probably going to be falling off. I don't know how much if they don't get those players re-signed, because they're still a very good team, but they would have a decline, I imagine. Ranta is also an interesting one. They have Kochetkov, which played 24 games last year, went 12-7-5. I can see Kochetkov getting some starts this year as well, like he did last year. But Ranta, man, he had really good numbers last year. 27 games, 19-3-3, 910 save percentage. It's funny because I was saying earlier, Ranta, I don't like betting him when he's in net, or I don't like betting the Hurricanes. There's something about him that just freaks me out. But those numbers are just completely opposite of what I just said. So it's interesting to see what they do there. They'll probably let him go and move Kochetkov up next year. He's I think it'll be Anderson, Kochetkov next year, the 1 and 2. But yeah, I believe those 7 players: Shea, Pesce, D'Angelo, Teravainen, Martinook, Natchez, Jarvis. They need to get those guys locked up. Martinook too. He's a good presence in the room. I can't see him letting him go. The players love him.
Awesome. Yeah, with Ranta, I don't think they'll just let him go. I think they would trade him at the deadline.
Yeah, deadline trade.
Because of his stats last year, which I think a big reason for those stats is because he plays on a really good defensive team in front of him. I think he would still do well elsewhere, but I think Carolina, because of his really strong numbers, and if he does continue that this year, could probably get a nice return for him in a trade
I agree.
to a team desperate for goaltending. Like I think the LA Kings. We'll get to the LA Kings when we get to the Pacific Division. A lot of people are really high on the LA Kings. I don't feel that way. I think the LA Kings need a guy like Ranta. They need a goaltender. So we'll of course get to that on another show. There's other teams like Buffalo that might want Ranta. There's other teams as well. But going to possible lineup here for the Carolina Hurricanes. And do not shoot the messenger. This is not my lineup. If I was coach of the Carolina Hurricanes, this would not be my lineup whatsoever. This is what is projected by Daily Faceoff. This is not my lineup. So I'd like to say that. But Mossy, what do you think here about this possible lineup? What do you think overall about it?
Yeah, I'll start the goalies. They're all going to get their fair share of playing. Anderson, Kochetkov, Ranta, I imagine. Anderson will carry probably the majority of the load, but Kochetkov and Ranta each carried 20-some games last year. So, we'll see how that plays out. It's serviceable goalies. It's good enough, especially with that defense core, like you mentioned. Arguably, probably the best defense core in the whole league, I think. You got Slavin, Burns, Brady Shea, Pesce, Orlov, D'Angelo. It's funny too. They bring back D'Angelo, getting rid of Gostisbehere, and he'll add a little bit of offense there too. So it's like a trade out there. I think that defense is very solid. Going to the forwards, it's a very important Svechnikov stays healthy this year. They could have used him big time in the playoffs. He played 64 games. He had 55 points. He has 23 goals in those 64 games, and I think that's quite low for Svechnikov. I think he could be around the 40 goal mark. I'm a little surprised that he only gets 23 and 64. So Bunting coming in there though with Aho Jarvis, that's good first line. It's interesting having Bunting on first line. I would have thought Bunting would have been maybe second, third line, and Teravainen also bumped up maybe second, third, or maybe first with that Aho. I'm not really sure. Like you said, those lines isn't necessarily how I'd have them either. I'm surprised Teravainen is on the fourth, but Martinook did have a sneaky year last year. So, yeah, I feel this is a decent lineup. Obviously, their defense core is the standout there, in my opinion. I think they're missing. Some people say Aho is that top elite NHL player. I still feel they're missing that one big piece. They're very good. Don't get me wrong. If everyone stays healthy, we'll see what happens in the playoffs. Obviously, this team gets into the playoffs. It's a matter of that conference final. Like last year, if I remember correctly, it was a sweep, but it was a lot closer than what it appeared. I believe 2 of those games, maybe 3, but at least 2 went to overtime. I think 1 was 4 overtime. So, things could just go the other way if, Svechnikov may be healthy. Players like that stay good. But yeah, overall, I think this is good team, good lineup. It's just interesting to see if they can get out of that conference final curse and win a game here, because that's the next step, I believe.
For sure. And then the last segment here, we'll take a look at future bets for the Carolina Hurricanes. Aho had 67 points in 75 games last year. He did have 36 goals, so Aho goals, Aho points are kind of priced pretty difficult to bet unless you think he's going to have a big year. And then Frederick Anderson, he had 21 wins last year. Only playing in 34 games, so it was kind of split between the 3 goalies. So we'll have to see how many starts he gets this year. Any of these future bets catching your eye here, Mousy?
Well, total points, I mean, over minus 110, under 120. The line's 109.5. They had 113 points last year. I could see them staying right around that 113 mark, likely finishing first, maybe second. The Devils are a little sneaky, but I can see them hitting that same 113 points as they did last year, or at least in that same area. I don't mind that. It's just if you like having minus 110 sit the whole year. Make the playoffs. Obviously, that's going to happen. I'm not laying minus 1,000. I don't think anyone's gonna. President's Trophy, little interesting one. The President's Trophy, win division, win conference. Those are ones you could all sprinkle half units on. Something if you feel like maybe even unit, depending on what you like your futures for all year to sit at. But there's not a ton of value in those. But of course, this is a team that's likely going to finish top 2 in their division, probably top 5 in the league. So, these are numbers that aren't jumping out to me, but numbers I'd look at if you really think that any of those are possible. And same with win Stanley Cup. They need to get past that conference final, like I mentioned earlier. But at plus 800, you could lay something on that if you feel, considering you're kind of banking on Svechnikov and players like that to stay healthy. Aho goals set at 36.5. He had 36 last year, so that doesn't really tempt me. He played 75 games, still a good amount. Nothing there tempts me, especially at minus 115. I don't see any value there. Aho points 72.5. He had 67 last year, so again, I don't see much going on there as far as any value. I think like I said, they're still going to be in that 113 point range or so, but you'd need Aho to have a better season. a bit better season than he did last year and probably play all 82 games. I mean, he played 75, which is still good. And Anderson, 30.5 wins, over 115, under 115. Played 34 games last year. I don't like that, only because I can see Ranta and Kochekov getting at least 20 some starts each, just like last year. You're kind of banking on, that Anderson got 4 extra starts last year over that, or 3 technically over that 30.5 wins. So, is Kochekov and Ranta going to potentially gain 3 extra games between the two of them, possibly? So I don't look at that. And who will have more points, Carolina or New Jersey? This one's interesting. I don't like really laying minus 130 and then having that sit all year. I'd much rather take the shot on New Jersey at even money. Again, they're going to finish top 2 in their conference, my opinion, or their division. And conference, there'll be top, 3 there as well, most likely. But Jersey, I expect, is also going to have a very good team. So I would rather lay the money on Jersey than Carolina, just because I don't want that 130 sitting all year. I don't like that.
Yeah, for sure. With Anderson wins, if you're going with the over, you're basically hoping that one of the goalies gets traded, or you're kind of hoping that one of the other 2 goalies is injured, which you don't want to ever hope for injury, because if it's a 3 goalie split, it's going to be really hard for Anderson to get to 31 wins in a 3-game split. So um, I would actually be looking towards the under, but
Yeah, if
I want to
anything.
know. I want to know what Carolina's plan is, if they're going to go 3 goalies again. Like, I'm not pulling the trigger on it, but if I was going to go with something with Anderson wins, I'd go with the under, I think.
And almost you could say the same with the Aho points and goals. I feel if you didn't think that he's going to have a better year than last year, at least play 5 more games. Again, those numbers they're higher than what he got last year, so you're kind of banking on him having progression if you want to hit the over.
Or Svechnikov playing on his line, because if
Very
you've got
true.
Bunting there, then for me it's the under.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm saying Bunting's a bad player, but you put Svechnikov. I don't know why Svechnikov. We'll see what the official lineup is for the Hurricanes when the season starts, but that is definitely not the lineup that I would use. That's for sure. But thanks, Mossy, for joining us. Follow him in the description below. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you, everyone, so much for watching this NHL season preview show. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons as we continue on breaking down all 32 NHL teams, which will lead to the regular season when the Getting Wild with Terry and Friends NHL betting show will return. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Of course, make sure to follow everyone in the description below that was on today's show to show them some support. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you on the next show.